Tyler. Like, you have your heart, your energy of like just like true.
But like, Kevin, I have to stop you. Like, I cannot listen to another speech on how great I am. Like, I just can't. I appreciate it. Who you're selecting is an incredible woman. Like, I'm so happy for y'all. But I'm not doing this.
This triangle was not about two women fighting over a man. It was about ambiguity intolerance, conflict avoidance, and what happens when we equate being nice with being accountable. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome to my channel. My name is Stephanie Yates Anya, Steph Anya for short, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Today, I'm going to be talking about what we saw unfold between Kevan, Tyler, and Keya on Love is Blind Season 10, Ohio. If you're curious, stay tuned. Before we get into the video, I want to take a second to thank today's sponsor, which is Grow Therapy. I love Grow. I work with Grow personally as a therapist, and one of the things that really drew me to them was the fact that they are insurance friendly. Grow works with over 100 insurance providers, including Medicaid in some states, and if you have Medicaid, you know how rare that can be, especially for behavioral health. I also love that it's easy to find the type of therapist that will work for you. You can filter and look at really detailed bios and even anonymous reviews on other people's experiences with the therapist. You're choosing your therapist. There are no blind matches. Whether you're looking for psychotherapy for yourself, couples therapy, family therapy, medication management, even life coaching services, Grow Therapy has options for you. I'd love for you to try them out yourself. You can find their link in my description box or use the QR code here on the screen. Thanks again to Grow Therapy. Now let's get back into the video. First, let's remember that there are going to be spoilers. I have to always remind you all of that. And also, please know that I cannot diagnose anyone. I do not know these people in real life. My perspectives are based on a highly produced and edited show. So there are a lot of things we may not know and things we might find out later that would change our perceptions. And with that, let's jump in. So if you haven't watched this season, let me bring you up to speed a little bit on who we're talking about. With Kevan, Keya, and Tyler, we're seeing a situation where Kevan cannot choose between the two of them. It seems that he connects originally with Tyler and he gives her some assurances that she's the person he wants to move forward.
Tyler, she's my number one, and I think I am Tyler's number one.
But then he ends up developing a bond with Keya. Now, I talk about in my first impressions of this season that once again, we've got some really confusing, disorienting editing happening. So it's hard to tell if we're seeing his first date with Keya, but I can't really be sure because the editing is a bit confusing this season. So I just assume that he had a connection with Tyler established before he and Keya even met. I think what's really important is that I'm seeing conversations about who Kevan should have been with, who he loved more, but to me, that's not the conversation we should be having. The conversation should be about signs that you're ready for that level of commitment. How do we determine readiness for marriage? So let's start with Kevan. I think with him, the thing that I noticed the most is that he is conflict avoidant, and typically conflict avoidance in this situation on Love is Blind specifically can really manifest as indecisiveness because to make a decision means to hurt someone's feelings, right? And so for Kevan, it seems like this is something he's not very comfortable with. With Kevan becoming a caregiver so early in life, a lot of the time it stunts the development of being able to choose what you want for yourself because you become accustomed to putting another person's needs above your own. And so sometimes we do interpret conflict avoidance as kindness. Now, I do believe Kevan probably is a very kind person. He seems to be that way. The way he talks about what he's been through and how he tries to step up for his family, it does show that. But I do believe that there are times where that conflict avoidance is actually an unkindness. We really saw the result of that through these connections. My first observation with Kevan is what I consider to be accelerated intimacy. Granted, in this sort of environment, during this sort of experiment, that is the expectation, that you will accelerate intimacy. You will be open and vulnerable sooner than you would be in the real world, because you only have 10 days to choose who you want to propose to. So I don't view this as a flaw, but I think it's worth noting because a lot of people I see are referring to these sorts of things as trauma bonding. And I remind you guys in a lot of these videos that trauma bonding is about a relationship between a victim and an abuser. So we're often using that term incorrectly in pop culture. What we're talking about a lot of the time is this accelerated intimacy where you're vulnerable really before it's earned. So Kevan shares about his mom almost dying from a blood infection.
My mom, she almost passed away. I, was at home. My mom, was upstairs. She's passed out. I'm like, my mom's out of it. Like, what the heck is going on? Call 911. We go to the hospital. It turns out she had a rare blood infection that was like affecting her leg. And literally, like, the doctor told me, like, hey, if you weren't suspended and didn't do that, like, you'd have came home and your mom, would have been gone.
And having to have her leg amputated and really needing to step into the role of being a caregiver.
It made me have to really like grow up and just be the man of the house, care for her, help her, and, really, make sure she's good.
When you share that type of information, it does accelerate closeness, because when a person is vulnerable with us, we feel trustworthy, we feel trusted by them. And it also encourages us to open up in ways that we may not typically do with people that we've known for, in this case, that period of time. But what happens is that sometimes we really confuse closeness with commitment. So just because a person is being open and sharing things with you, they might share about their fears, their past, it doesn't mean that they are committing to us. And I do see this happen a lot with my clients in the real world, where you are thinking like, well, obviously I'm the only person that they're engaging with, because why else would they be sharing these things with me? But some people actually hide behind that level of vulnerability, and we never truly know what's actually vulnerable for another person. You can see signs of a person being vulnerable, but what's vulnerable for one person may not be vulnerable for another person. So one person may talk a lot about their past, and if you are the kind of person who is very tight-lipped about your past, you might interpret that as, wow, they're really being brave and courageous with me. However, in actuality, it may not be something that's difficult for them to do. That might be how they engage with everyone. That might be how they bond with people or make people connect with them. And you're thinking that they're being open with you specifically, but this might just be the way that they engage with people. And it might be a pattern they have where they do it with strangers. So just be very cautious when you equate a person being vulnerable with you with a person committing to you or even desiring further closeness with you, because it may not be the case. A lot of the time you need more time to tell how they're viewing the relationship and how dedicated they are to it. The second thing I noticed about Kevan is that he seemed to have a fear of impact. And what I mean by that is that he seemed very, very cautious about Tyler being willing to move to Columbus to be with him.
So you're not open to either long distance or somebody moving to you?
No, I do feel good about someone, moving to Columbus. What I don't feel good about is it being for just because I'm there. Like, I feel like I should be able to meet in the middle.
I understand that fear. It's a lot of pressure if a person is uprooting their life to be with you. He was factoring that in because he didn't want to feel like she was making this big move just for him. But a lot of the time when I'm hearing that from people, it's usually a fear of responsibility, right? Because there's this thought of, okay, if you make that move for me, then what does that mean about what I kind of owe back to you, which is a fair question. It's a fear of being fully chosen, because I see a lot of the time where people are questioning, like, why me? They'll think, maybe you think you want to be with me, but you haven't seen me. You don't know what I look like. You don't know what I am like on a day-to-day basis. What if you make this move and you regret it? And that fear of causing sacrifice. So being afraid that a person is giving up things that would be better for them where they're coming from or with what they already have for you. So it's really a lot of the time questions about worthiness. And I think it's fair at that stage of the process, if you're still like, hey, we're getting to know know each other. We don't even know what we look like. And I could see him being afraid of that. But I think coming into this, knowing that, there are going to be people who aren't exclusively in Columbus, they're casting from all over Ohio, that you might have someone who would have to move. I would say it'd be important, if you feel like this could be your person, allowing the process to play out. We have seen people go through this process and relocate successfully, stay in healthy relationships from what we can see, and the move not really deterring the relationship. So you have to be willing to see the process through if you're on this experiment. In my opinion, he can't make that decision for Tyler. He can't tell her what is worth her relocating. And the reality is that whether you're relocating or not, in this experiment and in the real world, choosing someone means accepting the very real possibility that your decision will change their life in some way. This decision for you to choose them will change their life if they decide to make that decision as well. So if you're not ready for that, then the question is, how ready are you for this process, and how ready are you for commitment as a whole? The third thing I noticed about Kevan is that he really does have this pattern of giving a nice speech. This is something that we see him do with both Tyler and Keya, and they both get really exhausted with it. And I think this is the sort of thing that really shows the type of people that a person may have a history with dating. For example, if you've got someone whose love language is words of affirmation, you probably can't tell them how great they are too many times. They love to hear that. They need that. That fills them up, especially if you're doing it in public. But when you're just getting to know someone and you don't know what their love language is, if words of affirmation is not high up on their list, that may not be as comforting to them as you're intending. And I think that for Tyler and Keya, they were pretty quickly able to see that Kevan would rely on compliments instead of substance a lot of the time in their conversations.
Tyler, like, you have your heart, your energy of just being bubbly, just being able just to have just the best of times is just remarkable, it was so fire. It's true.
But Kevan, I have to stop you. I cannot listen to another speech on how great I am. I just can't.
And he would give them those long affirming speeches about how amazing they are, them deserving the world, them being great women.
You are a phenomenal, amazing person. And I do think you deserve the world.
Yes, I do. I know that.
And then they're like, we know this. I know this. I think the other thing is that when you're secure and confident and you don't necessarily need that external validation, especially not from someone you're just meeting who really doesn't know you well enough for those words to really mean a lot yet, it is hard probably to receive that and think of this as a good use of your time. And so with Kevan giving, I would say, pretty generic blanket statements about how wonderful they are, for them that felt we're moving further away from the aim, which is you making a decision and knowing what you want. Really, that affirmation without decision really becomes a form of deflection. Let's talk about this instead of this. I think the peak moment for this, for me, was when he was talking to Keya after he and Tyler had agreed to be girlfriend and boyfriend.
Are we official?
You are currently my girl.
And then Tyler tells him, what are you going to tell Keya? She ends up being upset and leaving. I'm going to get to Tyler because I have a lot of thoughts about Tyler. But I think that, again, he goes into this mode of let me just give a monologue about how great you are.
All I know is that Keya is one of one. My heart has always been loving and caring for you.
And then he ends the monologue by saying, and he's going to take accountability.
And I have to be accountable. Yesterday was such a crazy day frame.
But accountability would have been starting out by saying, let me tell you what's been going on. In case you don't know, Tyler and I had this conversation. She ended up not coming for the next date. He really didn't do that. He beat around the bush. He tried again to use flowery words to kind of conceal what was really on his mind, which he was thinking about how the conversation with Tyler imploded. He was not taking ownership. Again, this is another sign for me of how conflict avoidant Kevan could really be, because I think he was very worried about Keya feeling like she was his second option. So he was trying to make sure she knew that he wasn't by using his words.
Keya, you are nobody's second option.
Well,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
For clarity, I never felt like a second option.
Okay.
Ever.
I have to be accountable though.
But actions are going to be a lot stronger than words. And even in this case, when you're talking to me about all of these things about how I'm not a second option, that lets me know that you're still thinking about Tyler. In this instance, I think he was using niceness as somewhat of a shield. Something else I noticed about Kevan is that when he would speak, a lot of the time he would use the past tense. Like when he was talking to Tyler and he said he felt feelings.
At the end of the day, Tyler, I felt very deeply about you, but me and Keya were able to bond.
That language reveals ambivalence, right? Because you're not owning that this is how you feel right now. You're saying this is how I felt, yet you're still asking her to pursue a future with you. It shows how unsure you are. Now, as we're talking about Tyler, let's talk about her dynamic with Kevan, because there were a lot of conversations about whether or not she was in the right to be frustrated with him, if she took it too far. I think I fall somewhere in the middle because I think that a lot of what Tyler was experiencing with Kevan was not necessarily about her experience with Kevan. I think that she was getting triggered in this process.
It's like, I just want to be somebody's like undeniable choice. I just want for once, like, a man to be like
that they choose Tyler. I know.
We kind of come into Tyler and Kevan's relationship through the lens of conflict and drama. You know, we don't really see their bond before that. We see like one date where they're really connecting, and then the next thing we see him with Keya. So I don't really know how much of their dates prior should have given Tyler that assurance that she needed from him. But just knowing the way that Kevan talks to them from what we see, I could see why she might feel like he was choosing her, because why would you be giving me these monologues about how amazing I am if you didn't think that I was amazing enough to be your wife? Tyler told Kevan several times like she did not feel chosen and that she needed someone who would narrow it down for her to make her feel special. I think that's fair in the real world. I think in this process, it's so expedited. You have 10 days to choose if you're going to be engaged to someone. I think that part of maturity in this process is recognizing the system for what it is. I mean, it's speed dating. You need to get through everybody before you start making promises. I don't know if I saw Kevan really giving Tyler promises. That's up for interpretation and also based around what was included in the final edit. But if he did make her feel that way, then I don't know. But there were times that we saw Tyler interpreting things that I didn't actually see being directly said. Then she ultimately acknowledges that they weren't said. So I don't know if she had a real grasp on the reality of the situation. The question that I have for you guys is, do you believe in this situation when Tyler wants to end things with Kevan? Do you believe she was honoring her standards or reacting to anxiety that was activated by the structure of this process? I think that if Tyler is the kind of person that needs to feel that someone is not choosing or interested in someone else outside of her, that coming on Love is Blind was probably not a smart move for her, because in this process, it's expected that your partner will be dating other people. There is a possibility that they will be interested in other people and they have less than 2 weeks to figure out who they're going to propose to. Can it be disappointing? Of course. It can be disappointing if you feel like you've narrowed it down and they haven't. But I do think that it's unrealistic to assume that you would not be possibly in a position where someone may need a bit more time. I think she was putting a lot of pressure on the situation and on Kevan. And ultimately, I think if she would have handled it more like Keya, just make a decision based off of what you're needing. If you're saying, okay, it sounds to me like you are not in a position where you can make a decision, and for me, that's just not what I'm looking for, and just end it right there, okay, but the back and forth.
redo.
Oh, not a redo.
The tears, it was a very strong attachment she developed with him in such a short period of time. And I think she was really questioning how he could not be as attached to her. Her expectation seems to be that if it's real, you wouldn't hesitate. And I think that in this process, hesitation is natural. 10 days is not a lot of time at all. I think that if you care about someone making the right decision, you wouldn't want them to rush and choose you. You want them to do their due diligence in this process. And when they choose you at the end, they mean it. She was seeking certainty, but he didn't have that certainty to offer her. When I talked earlier about not necessarily trusting Tyler's perspective on what's being said, when she's in her confessional talking about why she's going to leave, she talks about how Kevan told her he had a stronger connection.
He talked about, having a stronger connection. And then he went on with the whole "you so great" speech. I'm not sitting through that.
And even the producers had to ask her, because I was writing, I was like, he didn't say stronger. The producers asked her, like, did he say stronger? She's like, well, he didn't say stronger, but
He said the other connection was stronger?
No, he didn't say it was stronger, but he said like after his first date, like I'm feeling strong connection.
But you see what's happening there. That anxiety is filling in the blanks. She doesn't want to be rejected. And so she's trying to protect herself from that pain by removing herself from the situation. But if you have such strong feelings for Kevan and you think he's such a great person, then why would you eliminate yourself without giving the process its due time? I truly believe that Kevan wanted to be with Tyler. I think that ultimately he would have been with her. Now, if she would have said yes to him, that would have been up to her. But I think that leaving before the expected time simply because you're triggered by the process that you signed up for, I think that, you know, she probably accurately realized that she was not ready for this process. This process is not for her. She probably needs to stick with traditional dating because this requires a lot of vulnerability, specifically to rejection. Because even if you get chosen by one person, you'll be rejected by 15. So think of it that way. Even if best case scenario, you do get proposed to by someone you want, there were 15 other people that did not choose to propose to you. Attachment anxiety often edits reality to confirm our fears. So when we have these beliefs that worry us, a lot of the time we're looking for evidence for those fears and worries. We're hyper vigilant about the possibility of being hurt so that we can escape as quickly as possible or hurt other people first. And so I think that in this situation for Tyler, she heard what confirmed her fears so that she could feel justified in her decision to leave. But then she recognizes that she has this pattern of leaving when things are challenging or hard. She's able to name her pattern. She knows that she's done that.
I'm gonna make the decision for you and I'm gonna leave.
But isn't that what you've done in the past? Like,
It is. What I did in the past was leave.
But the producers are bringing that out of her. And so I think that for her, that was an eye-opening moment that she's just doing more of the same. And that's what happens a lot of the time when we are triggered, is that we resort to our most comfortable coping mechanisms. For her, it seems like running away is a way that she copes with stress and anxiety, specifically relational anxiety. So we can see how being able to recognize and name a pattern is not the same as disrupting or interrupting that pattern. So she can see it, but is she able to change it? So then we ultimately do see that even after she and Kevan decide to be girlfriend and boyfriend, with a bit of a strong hand, mind you, she does kind of force him to make a decision.
So what you gonna do, Kevan?
I am choosing King Tyler.
Kevan, look at you making a decision.
And she asked him outright, am I your girlfriend?
I got a boyfriend.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I got a boyfriend.
She really, really wants him to give her that certainty and assurance. One conversation with the girls in the lounge already sways her to where she comes back to him in a much more frustrated and conflicted headspace. So it was challenging for Kevan because it just seemed like any external influence could make Tyler retreat. I think with Tyler, what we're really looking at was a strategy for control, even though it was subconscious. She didn't want to be the person who wasn't chosen, so she withdrew. She left the experiment on her own terms and ultimately avoided the vulnerability of not being chosen. I understand when you go through a lot of situations where you feel like you're not chosen and you just feel like I can't deal with that again. I respect that, but recognize that processes like this are probably not the best in those situations. Do I think Kevan was in the right for being so indecisive? I don't think he was in the right, but I do think he had a right to take those 10 days to make a decision that he thought was best for himself. Tyler did the same thing, but I don't think she handled it in a way that's going to leave her with peace. I think that when she watches the episodes back, I imagine she may feel maybe some embarrassment, maybe some regret. I don't know. We'll see. That'll probably be something that she shares in the reunion. For her, I wanted her to be able to show up as her best self and give herself the best chance at finding what she's looking for. I do think Kevan was leaning toward her. I do. But I think that as she became so anxious and so nervous that she made it a situation that was really hard to lean into. On the other hand, you had Keya, who was really so flexible and understanding, so much so to the point where I was kind of questioning, I'm like, is this side chick energy? Because you know, a lot of the time with mistresses, for example, part of what the pull is that the mistress will essentially be like a place of peace for someone because their wife and the rest of their life is making them so stressed and overwhelmed. And then you have this one place that's disconnected from all the other stressors of your life, where this person is letting you basically do what you want and not putting the pressures of responsibility on you.
I really don't want to, you know, mess with anybody's time and play with anybody's hearts, and it fucks with me.
I feel like you keep saying that, and maybe like you're ignoring the fact that we kind of all signed up for this.
That's true.
So
that's very true.
I think you're maybe overthinking just a little bit.
You're right. I am overthinking.
So I was worried about that with Keya. You know, oh, you don't have to choose right now.
Because I feel like sometimes you're in your head, and I want this watch to represent understanding that it is okay if it takes a few more ticks to understand where you're at with things.
I was worried about that. Why are you really discouraging him from making a choice? I was worried about that. I think in the end, I learned that Keya was just also needing time, and she also hadn't decided. She wanted to see the process through. She wanted to evaluate him and see if he could be a good partner for her. So she didn't need him to make a choice because she wasn't ready to make a choice, and I respect that. But at the time, it felt like, why wouldn't you want someone to make a decision? But in the end, I think it made a lot of sense. I was worried that Keya was sending the message of, please pick me because I'm so calm. I'm not putting any pressure on you.
Everybody's saying like throwing out phrases, strong connection this and
I know, right?
strong connection that.
But in retrospect, I do not think that is what was happening. You know, unfortunately, we don't learn a lot about Tyler. I think that makes us relate to her less and root for her less as well. Again, they have a lot of power with these edits when they don't show people's background, but we learn a lot about Keya. So we learn about her father passing when she was 15.
You know, my dad passed away when I was 15.
Yeah.
We learn about her mother having addiction issues.
Our mom has always like battled with addiction.
Yeah.
So my grandmother,
You raised you.
yep, she
Yeah.
raised us.
And so what we learned through that, I think, is they were trying to communicate to us that Keya's developed a certain level of emotional independence, but also a strong radar for instability. So when you grow up in an environment that can be really unstable, then you ultimately learn how to recognize the patterns of instability. And I think this worked to her favor as she was evaluating Kevan. She wasn't just focusing on bonding with him. I think that while she was giving him space, she was also making sure that she was learning as much about him as possible before she made her decision. I will say I thought it was interesting, you know, when Keya shared about the significance of watches for her and how it relates to her dad, who's a big stickler on time and watches, and how she'd finally gotten to a point where she could wear a watch. I thought it was really interesting that she gave Kevan a watch, because I took that to mean that she'd come to a point where she really was invested in him and invested in a future with him. So that for me was a bit of mixed messaging, because I didn't know what to make of such a sentimental gift. I mean, he gave her a basketball, but I think she gave him something a lot more meaningful. And then one of my favorite moments on the show, which I think a lot of people really loved, was seeing Keya tell Kevan that he wasn't ready to be a husband.
I have to stand on business when I say that you are not the one for me. You are not ready for a relationship, at least at one of this magnitude. And that's okay, but you are not ready to be anyone's husband right now. And I mean that with love.
And I think that a person like Keya, I could see her being the kind of person that elevates all the people in her life because she observes and she communicates gently. I don't think that she was mean to Kevan. I think that she really was careful with her words, and she let him know why she felt the way that she felt. I also love that she didn't feel that she needed to shower him with a bunch of compliments just because he was. She balanced it. She's like, here are some wonderful things about you, but here are some things I think you really need to work on, and some things that I've noticed that I don't know if you really are recognizing. I think the biggest difference between Keya and Tyler is that Keya's goal was not to be chosen. And it does kind of expose how many people, specifically the women that come through this show, and that is their only goal. Their main goal is to be chosen. They love being in triangles because more than one person is picking them. And I think that for Keya, that was never her goal. For Tyler, she made it clear like that was her goal. She's like, I want to be someone's number one pick. Keya was here to find a real partnership. And that goes beyond being chosen, because you can be chosen by anyone, but who do you choose? I love how she advocated for Tyler.
To be clear, Tyler deserved more too.
She did.
Even with you asking her to move forward, she deserved more.
She did.
And Tyler also advocated for her.
Keya also feels really good.
Yeah.
That just feels like shit to me. I'm sorry. Like, she could be laying out her engagement outfit where she's gonna get engaged in. Like, that's just kind of fucked up, Kevin. Like, if it was me, I would want you to tell me.
They didn't argue with each other. There were moments where Tyler did drag Keya into the conflict between her and Kevin.
Yeah, come here. That's a good man. Your man. I think I know your man. That's a good man.
Just need a second, I'm sorry.
In which she does later apologize for.
Sorry for bombarding you earlier outside. I didn't mean to bombard you like that.
It's okay.
That was kind of up.
It's okay. Emotions are high.
I know.
It happened.
That was up, though.
You wanna hug out?
Yeah. I love you. I love you too.
But Keya just seems like a very understanding person in general. It doesn't apply just to men, which some people, you know, it does only apply to men. And when it comes to women, they'll cut them off, can't maintain friendships, things like that. So I don't know Keya in the real world, but from what we saw on the show, I think that it was a really good lesson that we very rarely get on Love is Blind, which is it's okay to walk away from this process without somebody. And it's okay to use this process and not feel like you're going to be embarrassed if you don't make it all the way until the end. I think the final straw for me was seeing them at the mixer. The way that Kevan was talking about Keya, I didn't even know that they were actually by each other. Is Keya around? Like, he's talking to the other women about her, but where is she? And then they do the wide shot and she's right next to him.
I had a connection with two women. But Keya, you're one of the most amazing people. She was like one of the first women in my life to ever have me like open up my heart. Just like learning like, okay, this is what you need to do as a man.
You step up for that woman.
That, again, such a cop-out, and I think, again, it probably reaffirmed Keya's decision. It does, again, show his struggle with accountability, his struggle with conflict. For all we know, maybe they did have a one-on-one conversation that was edited out. I don't know why they would include this group conversation and not that, but who knows what's going on. But from what we saw, I think he wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with her, but he was nervous about standing firm in that and really initiating that. So overall, my view with Tyler is that I think overall she has a lower tolerance for ambiguity. It's hard for her to stand in the gray area, and I wonder how many other areas of her life that applies to. But it seems like she really struggles when things aren't black and white. She needs to know, especially when it comes to how people feel about her, where they really stand. And I understand that. I think it's only complicated in a situation like this where everyone is virtually strangers. A person can only learn so much about you in a few days. It's important to give them that time to get to know you, especially when their experiences of you are becoming really drastic and extreme. So on one hand, you know, you're really excited, giddy, having these conversations. On the other hand, you know, you're storming out of the room, you're ending things. On one hand, you're saying, are we boyfriend and girlfriend? And the other hand, it's like, I'm not even coming back tomorrow. There's just a lot of back and forth. Like, how could anybody feel comfortable enough to make a decision in that sort of pressurized environment where you really don't know which version of this person you'd be getting? With Kevan, we see low conflict tolerance. He's not able to deal with the possibility of disappointing people or possibility of hurting people.
I don't want to let anybody down.
But the thing about conflict avoidance is a lot of the time you end up doing that, but you have way less control over it, because now in this situation you have one person who is extremely hurt and upset, and you tried your best to appease them and make them happy. You said we're boyfriend and girlfriend. You did all the things that you think in that moment would make them feel comforted, and it didn't work. You would have been better off just remaining honest and letting her make that decision, and you accepting it as well, because in the end, it really didn't do Kevan any favors to avoid conflict. Confrontation, honesty, accountability, transparency, all of those things were absolutely required for him to maintain the respect of both of those women. I think some of the main things that we can take away from this triangle are that niceness is not the same as accountability. Vulnerability is not the same as readiness. Anxiety can distort our perceptions of facts. While being chosen does feel good, choosing wisely honestly is what actually protects you. And most importantly, in the conversation about what marriage readiness looks like, I think this one showed us that if someone avoids hard conversations, marriage will only magnify that problem. I think that applies to both Kevan and Tyler. Kevan has a hard time with conversations that can make him uncomfortable, but Tyler has an issue with sitting in uncomfortable situations. So if they do get into the real world and they're having a conversation about who's going to pay the bills, or they're having a conversation about when to start their family, or a conversation about in-laws, or a conversation about where to live, or her moving. If she was having such a hard time in the pods, I imagine that the conflict that she deals with in these situations would cause her to want to run away as well. So I don't think that Tyler exhibited anxious attachment. We saw anxious avoidant because she needed that reassurance. She needed that reassurance. She needed him to lock it down. And if he wouldn't, she's leaving. We saw her attempt to leave once and actually leave a second time. So it is important to recognize that I think both of them were not in a position where they'd be ready for marriage. For Keya, at least with what we saw with the edit, I think that she will be ready. It's just probably a matter of finding the right partner. I'd love to know your thoughts. Did you think that Tyler overreacted? Do you think you would be doing the same thing? I could absolutely understand why she was the way that she was, but I think again, because of the editing this season, we didn't really get to see her and Kevin's connection early on. I just don't think we're getting very clear narratives anymore with the editing, and I hope that that changes in future seasons because it's making it very hard to follow the show and invest in these relationships. Let me know your thoughts and let me know who you'd like me to cover next. I appreciate you all for watching. Remember to check out Growth Therapy. If you see yourself in any of these people and you feel like you're at a point where you would like to work on improving yourself, therapy is a wonderful place to get started. I ask that you like this video, subscribe to my channel, share it with anyone that you think may find it helpful or even entertaining. I truly appreciate you for watching this video all the way until the end. You didn't have to, but the fact that you did helps me out so much. So thank you.